Welcome to Chinwag Tuesdays, your passport to a world of language and culture.
Welcome to another episode of Chinwag Tuesdays. I'm Amanda, and today's special guest is Chris. He's an American teacher business coach and content strategist for teachers, and he lives in Spain. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Amanda. It's an honor to be here.
Thank you so much. And could you just introduce yourself, explain your journey a bit from teaching to coaching, and why Spain?
I love it. I always get that question, why Spain? So I started out way back in education after graduating from college. And my first real job, because I worked in college, I felt like I was in the fork in the road where either I would go into a management position or I had the opportunity to go into the nonprofit organization and industry. So I decided to go that route. And my first job was a sexual health educator. And so we would go into different middle schools and high schools and provide sexual health education for the classrooms. And so I think that's when I first started, to dip my toes into teaching. I don't have an education degree. I graduated with a degree in geography and anthropology. So really wild. And then my nonprofit, unfortunately, of course, it's funded through X scholarships and grants. So unfortunately, those grants ended. And so my program was like, you can either look for something in the larger nonprofit organization because this was a section of a bigger nonprofit, or look for another job. And one of my colleagues told me about this program in Spain called the North American Language Assistant Program. And I don't know why. I always have had this attachment to Europe for some reason, Western Europe. I did my study abroad in college in Italy. I lived there for a year. I feel like that was my world for a year. I knew Italian. I don't know it so well now.
Yeah.
And then, yes,
My
I loved
gosh,
it. I loved it. It
amazing.
was everything. I recommend. Go to Italy. And then I just went for it. At the end of the day, I looked at the program, I looked at the requirements, and I literally remember applying. I think my colleague told me about it like on Monday. I checked out the requirements on Tuesday, found out I have to submit everything by Friday that same week because it was the deadline. So it was chaos, but I feel like I got it in by Friday. But I don't know, that was a little bit of destiny, whatever you want to call it, putting your hand in. So that's how I came to Spain. And then I stayed essentially
Okay.
after the program. I ended up staying and started to really build my life here. So it's been about 5 years since I've been an expat, if you will, and I'm now living in Spain.
Yes. Wow. So we've been
Yeah.
expats, so to speak, for
Oh,
around nearly the
okay.
same period of time. It's 5 years for
Oh,
me
I love
in
it.
June that I moved to
Yeah.
India.
For me, it's going to be
Yeah.
this year near October, 5 years. Yeah, yeah.
I'm so curious. I've watched snippets of your journey, but I'm just really curious of like how I
Yeah,
know that you worked on some platforms, how that got started when you went to Spain on this like kind of
absolutely.
program.
So, yeah, with teaching, so I started this program, and this program did not pay well, to be quite honest with you. It does give you enough to pay for like your basic necessities. You also want to travel and live the Spanish experience. So to supplement my income in that moment, I was working after my job at an academy. And then through there, I made a friend, an English academy, by the way. And I met a friend there who was doing another side gig online. And this was obviously kind of 2018. And my friend was like, "Yeah, you just get online for
Okay.
25 minutes and then like you get paid by next month." And I'm like, "What? That sounds like a scam." I could not believe it.
If it's too good to be
Right?
true.
I was like, "What do you mean I can just get online and teach English?" Like it was mind-blowing at the time. So I went ahead and tried it because I did need to supplement my income because the program just wasn't paying enough. And on my end, I was traveling a lot because obviously it was my first time in Spain. So I was like, I need to supplement the travels.
Yeah.
So Then, so I applied to the company. This was VIP Kid back in 2018. I went through the typical process where you like do a demo video, then an interview live with one of their recruiters, and then you sign up. And the first month, I had, I think, 10 students book me. And so for me, even for me, it was a lot. I was like, whoa, 10 students booked me. And then I instinctively remember being like, okay, am I going to get paid for these 10 students? Like, I was crossing my fingers the whole month, like just hoping.
Yeah. Because you still thought it was a scam.
I was like, I'm working for free here. I'm going to get jibbed. And then next month came and I was paid and I was like, okay, so this is real. And I think that started like the rest of my career there, 2018, 2019, 2020, until the regulations in China forced a lot of these major companies to shut down so that foreign teachers don't interact with their students, with mainland students. And so I built up this career and I wasn't thinking like this was going to be my bread and butter for my entire life, but it was definitely shocking because I think, let me back up. I think what was so significant about starting on that platform back in 2018 was that it eventually built up to be my bread and butter because I left the program. I stopped working at my language academy, and this was really like, this is what I was doing Monday through Saturday, back to back. And this is what was paying my bills. So when that news came, it was really shocking because I was like, oh, I don't have anything to fall back on necessarily. Because also, I don't know if you felt this, Amanda, but being in a foreign country, I just felt really, there's this insecureness, I guess, like, would I do good in a job interview in Spanish? Would I even have the requirements that they have? Like, I didn't have my compatible degree here transferred over to European educational standards. So it was a lot going on. I don't know if that's happened to you, Amanda, where you're like...
Yeah, definitely. Well, actually, I don't have a degree. I did an advanced diploma. So in Australia, I wouldn't say it's easy getting a job without a degree, but it's easier than other countries. Like having a degree is not a prerequisite to get into a good company or get a good job. Yeah, so you've got universities or you have tertiary education, which is your diplomas, certificates, advanced diplomas. So I did an advanced diploma in hospitality management, which is basically half a degree. I could have taken that and transferred it into a degree in hotel management and basically have 1 year to complete the bachelor's. So a lot of people do that because it's a cheaper kind of step into a university degree. But I just did my advanced diploma, got a job in hotel management from that, which was great in Australia. But when I came here, because there is so much competition for everything, one of the prerequisites for any job is you have to have some kind of degree, which I didn't have. So even when I was looking at trying to like enhance my skills for teaching, everything I was looking for were postgraduate certificates or certifications, and I'm not a postgraduate. So yeah, that was really tough. So that's why I ended up doing my diploma through a TEFL Academy, just because it was one of the only options I had because I couldn't go through a university with what I wanted.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up, Amanda, because for me, when I was first applying to VIP Kid, one of the requirements was to have some sort of background in English. And even though I had background teaching English in this program, I didn't have any like significant like degree saying, yeah, I'm qualified to teach English. So I also had to do a TEFL certificate. So after the whole 2020 thing shut down, I think I was really at a moment in my life where I had the opportunity again to choose many different paths, just like back when I finished college and I was like adulting. So for me, it was either go pursue education back home in so I'm from Los Angeles, California. So go back to LA and go to, I had applied to USC to get my master's in education and become an elementary school teacher. Also to maybe stay in Spain and try to like look for a job here, even though I was a little bit shaky on my foundations in terms of, do I meet the basic requirements for any jobs that exist here? Or three, I always had this feeling inside where I was like, at my heyday in terms of the platform, it was like, Chris, if you were able to just market yourself, you could essentially have the same goal. Like you can have the same flow, income flow, and workflow as you have on this app. But this app, what it's doing is really taking the burden off of marketing off of you and just being able to bring students to you. So I was like, okay, what if I just go and pursue that route and go independent, so to speak, basically become your own business owner, an entrepreneur, freelance, many names I feel like there are. So I ended up going with that route. And it was really scary because for me, I've grown up with this expectation that, you know, that you get your 9-to-5 job, you have a monthly income that's secure, they're paying all the benefits and your health insurance, yada, yada, yada. So for me to take that step was really frightening. And also because I think there was part of me that was really struggling to understand that because I was a teacher, there was this limiting belief, if you will. Because I was a teacher, that meant that I couldn't or didn't have access to having a good life or a better life without sacrificing this notion of I have to be giving, I have to be generous, I have to sacrifice. So it was a lot going on in terms of really changing into becoming a freelance or entrepreneur. But I did it, and I was able to start to get a few students from the company, actually. That was my base. And that was really earth-shattering because I was like, okay, wow, I'm actually doing what I thought I could do and work with students. But of course, 2 students wasn't going to maintain me. So I was like, now what do I do? And I didn't have the capital or money to invest in advertisements or pay any spaces that would serve me as advertisement. So before that, I did this course to really understand the basics of business because I literally had no idea, even though I feel like as teachers, we have all the skills to be business people, but I think it's just being able to translate those skills into, okay, that's what that is for me. And so through that, I found my business partner, my current business partner, Kinga, and she told me about this application, this social media thing in China called Xiaohang Shu. In English, it's Little Red Book. And so she went on there very bold, very brave, because, you know, who thinks of going onto a foreign social media platform and start talking about your services? Like, anyways, mind blowing. But then I followed suit because she had a lot of success finding people. And I think when I went on there, I came to this conclusion or this realization, if you will, that social media is the new space to communicate. I don't think paid advertisements, whether it's on a newspaper, a billboard, a television ad, a radio space, like those, I think are becoming more, I don't know, maybe obsolete. Maybe that's a bold statement to make. But I think social media is this up and coming new way to communicate. And I don't know about you, but if a business doesn't have at least some social media presence, I don't know if I trust it.
I was just going to say that is the first thing I look at when I look at a website. I go to the bottom and see what socials they have. And if there's no social media, I feel really suspicious.
Are you updated? So like you see how like significant that is? So yeah, I think that's when I came to the conclusion of social media being this powerhouse in terms of just letting someone across the world know that, hey, you're a teacher. I'm out here ready to work with you and help you with your language learning goals. And so then through that, after being able to really sustain myself and create a solid, strong client base, then there was another learning process. And for me, that was understanding that your one-to-one time isn't the only thing that you have to be capped at or limited at, because be thinking of your business and thinking of growing something that is bigger than you requires this out of the box thinking. So for me, it was thinking of ways that I could bring this type of cash into my life, this income, different income streams essentially, and how I could quote unquote diversify the ways that I'm working. And so for Kinga and I, that was essentially going into coaching and helping other teachers accomplish what we did through our strategies and framework. And I think there's many ways to think about diversification. Digital products or even YouTube channels are really awesome. Podcasts, all of these things. I feel like there's a limitless world that we can be because I feel like as teachers, we're so creative. So that was also eye-opening for me at that time.
Yeah. And the demand's there. Like even before I launched my podcast, and it was just going to be a YouTube series, I didn't even think of doing it as a podcast. But I had so many people asking if I had a podcast and will I start one? And even though there's so many other English podcasts out there, Australian English podcasts, people want what I've got. So why not do it?
Exactly. And it's not about having to have a million followers. It's really about finding the people that you connect with. And if you're a teacher, the students that want to work with you versus choosing another teacher. So through that, we started coaching other teachers specifically on two fronts, if you will. On one end, it was a business aspect, understanding like scheduling, platform, curriculum, sort of those basic things for foreign language teachers. And then on the other front was understanding what social media is and how it's essentially your business partner, because it's the way that you are letting the world know that you're here, you're present, and you're ready to work. So with that being said, social media, of course, because it's this great opportunity where everyone has access to say something, it's obviously saturated. So to be able to make sure that your message or what you want to say gets to the right person, there has to be some intention to that. It has to, you have to be very purposeful. I think it's back in 2018, even 2020 during COVID times, like sure, you could have maybe uploaded a random photo or done a silly dance video and you would have gone big. But I think that time has passed now. So now we have to really be, again, just purposeful of the way that we want to show up and how we're saying what we need to say.
Yeah, definitely. And so in your experience, what kind of common challenges do you think that teachers face and how do you normally help overcome them?
So I think for a lot of teachers, that initial, let's say, challenge we have to overcome is this fear of being seen on social media, essentially. And that comes, I think, from not knowing or not understanding really what social media is. I think there's this notion of, oh, it's for teenagers, or it's like these lip syncy things, or it's these like weird people just doing random things on there. And so I think it's breaking through those thoughts and flipping the script and essentially being like, no, social media is this place for you to really tell the world that, hey, I'm a teacher, I'm a foreign language teacher in this language, and I'm ready to help serve the students that want to work with me. And so I think that's one of the first barriers that we have to break through. And then the second one is understanding how to do content. And I think that's with anything really. I think that's growing pains, if you will. Like when you're learning something new, it's, ooh, like I need to learn how to do this. And so thinking...
It's going to be my first 5 podcast episodes.
Yeah, but everyone honestly has gone through, like even the person that has, even I'm going to go there, Beyonce, even she's gone through growing pains way back at the beginning or whatever she tries to do next.
It's part of the process.
And I think it's the part of the process where I think we need to, I don't know if the phrase learn to love is the most appropriate, but I think it's the phase that we have to embrace, because I think you learn about yourself a lot during that process. You're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I think those are some of the barriers, those initial barriers. And then I think the last one that we always have to really talk about with the teachers that I work with is the understanding that, well, my business partner and I focus more on short form types of platforms. Although I understand that YouTube has shorts and things like that now too, or Twitter, but we mainly focus on like short form type of social media platforms like Instagram and TikTok mainly. So a lot of the first barriers that we have to also overcome is that understanding what short form media is, and that you can't spend necessarily 10 seconds greeting your viewer and then telling them about your expertise and your authority and then getting into the meat and bones of your valuable educational content.
Yeah.
So it's understanding that you can play around with the typical like framework that we have of like introduction, you know, the rise to the climax, then the resolution and takeaways. On social media in terms of short form videos, you don't have to be so constrained to that. You can really play around with the order. And I think that's what's so fun about content creation.
Yeah. You just
Yeah,
play around
exactly.
with it and see what works. Yeah. Yeah. So I am actually in the process of going independent.
I love it.
Yes. I've got my website set
I
up.
saw.
I've already given myself a date when I'm going to
Okay.
get off Amazing Talker. So by the time this podcast comes out, I'll probably be independent. So
So happy.
what are some key tips that you would give teachers wanting to start their own business
Yes.
or go
Okay.
independent?
Awesome. So I think when we're talking about going independent, for me and what I did and what we do with the other teachers that we work with is really having the foundations set up and solid. So for me, I had to make sure that I had some sort of system to schedule my lessons, because if not, it would be really hectic trying to find calendar dates and putting them in manually. I feel like you have to understand your systems even at the beginning before you blow up or pop off, if you will. Really having those systems at the
Yeah.
beginning solid will help you as you grow. So first and foremost, understanding like how you're going to schedule. So I use Calendly. I don't.
Okay,
Yeah.
this is the part I'm stuck at. I don't know whether to do Calendly, cal.com, or
Ooh, okay, so
TidyCal.
I'm in between Calendly and TidyCal on there. So I found those systems
okay.
to be the
Yes.
best. Obviously, I have stuck with Calendly because I think for me, I'm used to it by now. And I really do the features that it has because it sends a reminder to my parents
Yeah.
24 hours in
Ah,
advance, for
yeah.
example.
See, that's what I need. Yeah.
Exactly.
people can't
So
say, "I forgot."
I can say that you've got the email beforehand. You can also include a cancellation policy clause under their view.
yes.
And I love that you have your view and then you can customize what they see. And so you can really brand your calendar.
Oh, cool.
And I think what I love about these calendar systems like TidyCal or Calendly is that they take away the need for you to have a website. So if you're like just starting and you're not
Yes,
sure
true.
where to go, at least having that as a website, quote unquote, already sets you up to be a professional or come across professional.
Yeah. One of my friends, she's a doctor here in India, and I think she was going to start some kind of coaching slots because she gets a lot of questions about the medical exams and stuff like that. And I actually I advised her about Calendly because I saw that they do the cancellation policy side, and I basically said exactly what you've just said now. If you don't want to set up a website, this is really great. You can do all of these sorts of things. And now this is something I'm struggling with. Which do I use? Because I want to embed
Yeah.
it. But yes, anyway, I'll stop talking
No,
about
and
me.
that's the next point I was gonna get to, Amanda. Like for your website, I've been able to embed Calendly things into my websites or other websites I've worked on. So I'm not too sure about TidyCal on that end in terms of being able to embed things, but
Yeah,
okay,
I think
okay.
they all can. I asked ChatGPT to compare.
Yes, ChatGPT, I love it. So I think that's
Yeah.
number one, just being able to understand like how you're gonna organize the lessons that come in so that the students can also know
Yeah.
when they're going to have their lesson, essentially. And I think number two is being sure, and this isn't something that is set in stone, but understanding that you need to have an environment to have your classroom, especially if you're like online. So whether that's Zoom for the first months and then you move on to something else. And also just being really acquainted with that. And I think for me, what's super important in terms of picking a platform is the user experience on my students' end. So is it easy for them to register? Is it easy for them to find the class? Is it easy for them to access any activities or homework that I send? So that's what I like to think about when I'm thinking of a platform. And so for me, I think I started out with Zoom, and then I came across this platform called Classin. And that's what I've been using for the past, I think, 3 years now. Classin is great. On the user end, it's really user friendly. They can see their class right away. And on the back end, you can also plan your classes and lessons out really well. So yeah, I think that's number 2. And then the last thing I would say in terms of starting out is really having a strong payment processor. So this company that's going to help you process your payments. The company that I've went with is Stripe, just because of the availability that it has in different countries. There's other, obviously, things out there. PayPal, I think this is more limited, but like Klarna and those spaces also provide some sort of payment processing. And again, I think it's also thinking back on your students and like what is the easiest for them. And so for me, Stripe generates a nice QR code. They scan it, they pay, done. So trying to really just minimize the steps that your student or your student, parents, if you have a younger student base, trying to minimize their steps so that they can book the class, they can pay, and done. They can forget about it until the day of the lesson. So I think that's my biggest tip when starting out.
Yeah, that's so important too, because that's one of the reasons that I am looking at going independent. I want a bit more like control and freedom over my schedule, my earnings, everything like that. But it's not a good user experience for my students and potential students. It just gets really frustrating. And the only reason I've stuck with Amazing Talker for as long as I have is what you were saying before about they look after the marketing. I have students that book me that are not from social media either. Not all my students come from Instagram. So I do really like that part of it. And it's given me a constant stream of income while I am doing my stuff on the side. But I'm ready and at that point now where I'm like, no, I need to break free.
I love that. No, I love that you brought that up, Amanda, because I think it's so true that I think some of the teachers that I've worked with at the end of their program, they're still in that in-between space. And to be quite honest with you, when I started transitioning, I did mention I just had 2 students, but I still had to supplement the rest of my income. So I had applied to different companies. I had applied to Camly, for example, and some other ones that I forgot their names. So Engo, Engoo, Engo.
I'm actually on Engoo, but I don't really tell anyone. I don't care mentioning it now. But I don't tell students because that's just like a gap filler for me. That's a schedule filler.
Same.
So I go on there when I need to fill gaps in my
That
schedule.
was me when I used Engo as my like filler. I was like, okay, Camly's set, my independent students are set. Okay, Engo, come on. So I think it's totally normal for you and teachers to have these stepping stones, if you will. Imagine you're in a car. It's not about looking like a kilometer away. It's literally about looking out like even 1 meter away and then step by step. So I'm glad you brought that up.
I actually said to my husband a couple of days ago, because I've been talking to him about the process. And I said to him, like, because obviously at the moment I contribute to household expenses, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, do you think it's going to be a big issue if like when I start being independent, if my income's going to be less? And he's like, you just save all your money anyway. It's not going to be much different.
I love it.
But like, then I thought out loud and I was like, look, what I can do, I've got Engo as the backup. I still have my Cambly profile active. So I've got those backups if I need it. So like, I'm not too worried because like, I know that I'll be able to get a couple of students independently first. And then I know I have those options if I need to, because I still have to pay my bills.
No, and I think you said something really important that I love to tell the teachers, and this is more in like the social media realm, but I think it also applies to business and trying to go and do things on your own, is that I think you have to set your mind up to think that the worst thing that can happen is that you go back to where you were. not necessarily fail 100%.
Yeah, exactly.
You just go back to where you were. And then
Yeah.
from there, you can choose again or you can start again. So I think for me, when I was starting out, I was like, oh, if this doesn't work out, like I'll have to like, I was thinking the worst case scenarios, but I didn't realize
Yeah.
that I had Cambly as a backup. I had Engo. I could apply to something else if I
Yeah.
had to. It's like you still have the things that made you what you are in you.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, that's true. All right. So this is something that I just really love asking non-Aussies that I'm interviewing. But what are some assumptions that you have about Australia? I'll
Okay,
tell you if
okay.
you're right or wrong.
Okay, well, I'm not sure if this is the right way to start answering this question, but my first exposure to Australia
Let's do it.
was the pop duo, the Veronicas, back in middle school.
Ah, really? Is that it? That's your first exposure? I feel like they're still I wouldn't say they're new, they're not. But okay.
The song?
Yeah.
Do we know this? Yes.
Yes. Yes. I should add the Veronicas onto my next music
Yes.
post for pop music. I'll add that. Maybe I think pop is next week.
So that was my first exposure. It was me in like middle school on the school bus, like jamming to the Veronicas, like untouched. And then
Nearly every American I've asked this question to has said Crocodile Dundee. And then we get Veronica's. I love it. I love the variety.
and then of course the next step would be Kylie Minogue. You know, that incredible.
yes.
Yes.
Princess
yes.
of Pop. My very first CD player I got for Christmas from Santa came with a Kylie Minogue CD. And I was
love it,
so
I love it.
excited.
For me, this lives rent free in my mind. The 2002 Brit Awards, where she like comes out from the CD player and then pops up and just starts performing, and I'm
Oh,
like,
yeah.
who thinks of that? So
Yeah.
those are my first exposures
All right.
to Australia, and so I was excited
Okay.
to get to this part to share that with you. And then I
love
think
it.
the assumptions for me, so I'm from California, and for some reason I have this assumption that Australian English and culture and vibes, if you will, are somewhat parallel to Californian English culture and vibes. And by that I mean, I feel at least Southern California tries to shorten things just Aussie English. I feel like it's more obvious. But like I remember growing up in
Yeah.
LA and I would try to shorten everything, or we would use acronyms like LOL. And so I think that's my first assumptions is that Aussie English really tries to shorten everything. Is that true? Okay.
Oh, yes, definitely. And it just doesn't stop. Every year, Macquarie Dictionary, which is Australia's national dictionary, they do a word of the year list. And last year's word of the year was Cozzy Lives, which is short for cost of living.
Cosy live. Wow.
So, yeah,
Cosy
Cozzy Lives. Yeah, oh God, can't go away this year. Cozzy Lives. But yes, we
I
do
love
love to
it.
shorten everything. I don't know whether it's just because we're lazy talkers. We just try and shorten everything. When COVID happened,
more.
there was the Rona, get
Rona.
the jab. I'm in ISO.
Okay. Miss Rona, welcome to the stage. No,
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
So that is true.
My other assumption is, so this is really a micro assumption, but I always say the phrase no worries. And I feel like that comes from Australia. Is that true? Like starting out a phrase? No worries.
Yeah, so we do say no worries. Yeah, exactly, no worries. But we've also got some really extreme slang versions
Okay.
of no worries. So you can say no worries, you can say no dramas.
No dramas.
But a really slang way, a really slang way is saying no wuckers.
Whoa. No whackers. No
Yeah, no
whackers.
wuckers.
Okay.
Wuckers.
So hard.
Yeah. And that comes from so no fucking worries, but they've changed the letters a little bit. So it's no whacking furries. So then they cut it down to no wuckers.
Wow. My mind is processing that.
Yeah. No one really says that much. Well, I wouldn't say no one because someone will probably come at me in the comments saying we say it. I never really heard it too much, but it's not as common as no worries or no
Okay.
dramas. Yes. But yes, I'm pretty sure that is Aussie.
And
No
then,
worries.
sorry, going back to pop icons, I feel like Australia has a lot of pop icons.
Yes.
Anyways, Kate Blanchett, also fave. I just love her. Was she the one who did the Thor movie? Yeah. No. I think so, right?
Yes.
She
Yes, I
did
think
the
it was. I
villain.
think she was in Thor.
Like,
Yeah.
she had just so much fun. And I'm
Yes.
like, "Ugh, I need more of Kate in my life."
Yeah, she's great. I actually use her videos when I talk about the cultivated
Oh,
accent
yeah.
because she's got an Australian
I've heard about
cultivated
that.
accent. So I use her as an example.
So, and then
Yeah.
and obviously when I got older, there was this assumption that I guess I had this fantasy that in Australia there was this harmonious relationship, if you will, between the Australian Indigenous people and Australians that have colonized and come after. But then I found out that's maybe not necessarily true. But I don't know. I would love your insight on
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. I actually talked a little bit about this
Oh,
similar
okay.
topic with Hannah because she had the assumption that
Yeah,
Australians really
that's
respect the Indigenous people. And I said, nowadays, yeah, it's changing, it's getting there, but definitely not before. Like Australia had a policy called the White Australia policy, which just ended in like 1970, where they didn't really allow anyone of color to immigrate to the country. They only wanted white English speaking people, and then they couldn't get enough people from the UK after World War II, so they let Europeans in, but they were quite strict with their requirements. And
yeah, that's so
eventually now
good.
it's open. But I think this Australian government's doing a lot to respect the Indigenous people, which I think is really great. It's really
Yeah.
important because the Indigenous peoples of Australia were there first. Australian Indigenous culture is the longest continuing culture of the world. It's 65,000 years old.
That's
And
wild.
if businesses have to do a welcome to country or do like an acknowledgement before an event, so what? Let them. I don't know why people
Yeah.
make such a big deal about it. I get so upset reading these comments on social media of, oh, not again. It wasn't even our generation that did it. No, but it still
Yeah.
happened. And it wasn't even that long ago. There's still people alive today that are impacted directly from the actions from colonization that has been going on.
No,
So,
100%. Wow.
yeah,
Well, I did not know all of that.
yeah. Yeah. So yes, it is definitely changing. For example, all of the cities or the regions where those cities lay have Indigenous names, and a lot of companies now, a lot of people refer to the Indigenous names. Like for example, the Indigenous name for Brisbane is Meanjin. So it's quite common that you'll see businesses say that they're on Meanjin land or they live in Meanjin, things like that. So a lot more people, companies, businesses, Tourism Australia, they actually have a whole website, like section on their website
Wow.
dedicated to the Indigenous
Okay.
names. And I think it's
Wow.
wonderful.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but some people are not happy about it. I think it's very mixed. It really is
Okay.
very mixed. But yeah.
Alrighty.
Yeah.
And then I think in terms of my last assumption is that Australia is a very expensive place to live. That's what I always hear.
Ooh, yes,
Oh
and it's gotten
no.
worse. Like, I've been back twice since I left, and even those two visits, there was a 9 month gap in between. Prices got more expensive. It's so expensive. I had a girl, we're not friends anymore, but she's from Canada, and she came to visit me in Australia, and she was shocked because, like, stuff that you just get at the drugstore or department stores, like, for example, that is just like $5 at the pharmacy is like $15 at like the supermarket in Australia. Like things are so expensive. Yeah,
Yikes.
that's true.
And could I share my
Yeah.
favorite Australian word or Australian slang with you?
Of course you can. Yes. What
So
is
for
it?
me, it's Macca's.
Ah, yes. Okay,
Like,
fun fact about Macca's.
wild.
McDonald's Australia has trademarked that
No
name.
way.
So no one else can use it. And it
That's
just started
so
off
smart.
whenever Macca's got started in Australia. Of course, Australians started shortening the name. And then Macca's literally were like, we're trademarking this shit.
Oh my
And they've trademarked it. The app is called
my
My Macca's
God,
app, history on the
I'm
website.
dying.
Yeah.
Wait, but so do they also use Macca's like on the sign or is it still McDonald's spelled out?
No,
Okay,
it's still
okay.
McDonald's on the sign. It's just the M, and
Okay,
it still
okay.
says McDonald's. But like you go in there and like they have a burger called the Macca's Burger. You got your Big Mac, Macca's
Love
Burger,
that.
everything.
Love that.
Yeah. All right. So before we finish up, Chris, if anyone wants to reach out to you or get in touch with
Of
you, how
course,
can they
I
do
think
that?
for me the best way would be through DMs, both on Instagram or on TikTok. I just started on TikTok a month ago, so I'm starting to grow there too. And they're both the same handle
Great.
at Chris the Online. And yeah, I'm more than happy for anyone to DM
Great.
me, whether it's to get any like initial help in terms of thinking of how to go independent, or if you want to like explore some other
Yeah.
opportunities on how to work with, or just have general questions about any of the content that I'm posting. Yeah, I'm open
Yeah.
to chatting.
Great. Awesome. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's been wonderful. I've really enjoyed
This
it
is
as
so fun. I
always.
love this,
Thank
Amanda.
you so much.